Have you ever thought, is this just me when struggling to stay organized, start tasks, or manage time? For those of us over 50, these challenges might not be just aging. They could be ADHD hiding in plain sight for decades. I'm Jami Shapiro, host of Grandma Has ADHD, and I'm building a community where your experiences matter. Whether you're diagnosed, questioning, or simply curious, you're not alone. Our Facebook group is filled with vibrant, understanding people over 50 who share their stories, strategies, and yes, even their struggles, with plenty of laughter along the way. Ready to find your people? Join our growing Grandma Has ADHD Facebook community. Please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen and share it with someone who might need to hear they're not alone, because ADHD doesn't have an age limit and neither does understanding yourself better. Together, we're changing the conversation about ADHD after 50. Come be part of the story. I am beyond excited, and I use excited a lot, but I am beyond excited to introduce today's guest to you. This is a person that I have been begging to be on the podcast since before there was a podcast. She is, besides my mother and my oldest child, she knows me better than any of my other guests. Her name is Dr. Jane Rosen Grandon. She is a PhD and she is a marriage and family therapist who has spent her professional life dedicated to helping her clients achieve stability and satisfaction in their lives. Her unique column has been published for over 20 years by the Hamburger Square Post in Greensboro, North Carolina, where she resides with her husband and partner of over 40 years. Together, they have two children.
51 years now.
Of course, well, I should know this because I'm getting to the line. So they have two grandchildren, and they live in what I affectionately have called, since I can remember, the zoo, because there have always been a lot of animals. Jane is my cousin, actually. I was the flower girl at her wedding. And so it is going to be a super, super fun conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about my childhood and how she knows me. I'm going to talk about what I remember about her. And then we're going to talk about ADHD in our family. Oh, so much to cover. Like I said, beyond excited to welcome Jane. And I will also say this, that I am divorced, but before I got divorced, I would call Jane on a regular basis to get marital advice. And because she has an amazing marriage, I just adore her and Gary. I think it was because they had the best flower girl ever, and that was why they had such marriage success. But she's also, that was me. The book that she has written, Keeping Love Alive, has been printed 11 times. So it's 11th printing, not that it's only 11 copies. I have read it. I remember actually one thing that I learned from you, or I read it, was like how important it was to connect every single day, and that you, Gary, would get in the hot tub. And at the end of the day, you would talk about your day. And that was like your time away from everybody else. Right?
That is still true.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you. Thank you. So I have been really literally asking Jane, please be on my podcast. She is a grandma with ADHD. So she definitely fits the narrative. But again, I have a personal connection to Jane and really always respected her. She was my unofficial godmother. My mom and dad could not get it together to agree, but I was always told by my mother, Jane, that it was supposed to be. But you are actually my youngest child's godmother too. So anyway,
yes,
that's a whole other conversation. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jami. I appreciate it.
So we talked before the episode that you are not an ADHD specialist. That's not how you practice. But I do want to learn a little bit about your ADHD personal story and how you discovered that you had ADHD, if we can go there first. That's what I do with all my guests.
Absolutely. And I'm learning more about this and reflecting more, sort of, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly, it's different ideas sort of pop into my mind. And I kind of reflect back. I'm at that age now. I reflect back and I see different patterns. And I think I mentioned to you, I remember very clearly in fourth grade, my mother being called in because the teacher had kind of had enough of, she would pass out the papers, give all the instructions, and I'd raise my hand and say, "What are we doing?" And as I look back, certainly a big indicator, and nothing, of course, was recognized except that it was bad behavior. But then when I was in seventh grade, we had an intern. I thought it was an intern. And this woman, I know she would come in and out of the classroom. And one day she said, "Would you come out in the hall and talk to me?" And I said, "Gosh, I'm not the dumbest. I'm not the smartest. I don't know why you'd want to talk to me." And she said, "Well, because you're the kid who every time the clock ticks, you look at it. And every time someone walks down the hallway, you're following it, you're tracking it. And every time a bird flies by the window, man, you got it." So I realized that more and more, that is truly me. Unfortunately, it was not acknowledged, although I was told that she had relayed this information to my parents, but nothing was ever said. It just
Mhm.
wasn't even given the title of ADHD at that time. It was
Right.
just sort of acknowledging that I was a kid who did something different.
Easily distracted. That is the unfortunate thing. In fact, when Will, my oldest, came to me and said, "I have ADHD," I said, "No, you don't. You've been reading since you were 3," because I couldn't sit still to read. So in my mind, it was the hyperactive little boy. That was ADHD. And everybody thought that hyperactive little boy would outgrow it. And here we are. Not the case.
We just don't seem to outgrow the
We,
ADHD kind of stuff.
we don't. So when did you get diagnosed, Jane?
In my 30s, I had already finished a master's degree. Another thing that popped into my head was just the recognition that growing up, I thought everybody had to read a paragraph 6 times to know what it was in it, you know? But I'd start
Mm.
reading it, one sentence, I kind of get distracted and my thoughts would go somewhere else. I'm at the end of the paragraph. I have no idea what I just read. And so I was one of these people that just had to read and read and read and read to get through the material. And it's still true.
And yet you have a PhD. So
Yeah.
there we are. So we're going to interweave. This is also going to be cousin, part therapist, part grandma with ADHD. When did you realize that I had ADHD? Because I've only
Uh,
known for 10 years.
maybe yesterday.
Really?
Maybe started. I never really recognized it in you, to be honest. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you also have your own children and your own work. But like from what I understand, I'm actually combined type. So I'm hyperactive and inattentive. And I think looking back, it was like so obvious. But anyway.
I
So
tell you, a wonderfully engaging child.
well, that's true. That runs in our family, right? So, one of the conversations that we were having was when I had suggested to you that I thought that it was my grandfather that had ADHD and we're related. So, my grandmother, Miriam, was Jane's mother's sister, Aunt Viv. So, we're related maternally. And I had suggested to Jane that I thought that it was my grandfather who had ADHD. And the reason that I had suggested that is my grandfather, although he had gone to school for accounting, he could never take the CPA exam. And I can actually remember your father commenting on that. And looking back at the pieces, I think it was just he didn't have the ability to focus and take the test. I think that's one of the reasons. And then you were the first person to suggest to me that you thought that my grandmother, who, by the way, was my favorite person in the entire world, that she may have had ADHD. And so I said to Jane, I think I'm going to have to title this episode, Did My Grandma Have ADHD? So, Jane, what makes you say that my grandmother would have, you think, looking back, had ADHD?
Well, first, I want to just say that I was very close with my Aunt Miriam, your grandmother. And I was privileged. I felt that she trusted me and she confided in me, even when I was a teenager. And I always had a deal of respect for her. I always thought she was extremely bright. And well, I guess she did work for a while and several years she did work. But she was one who struggled with self esteem and struggled with smoking cigarettes, had a very hard time giving up cigarettes and
Mhm.
smoked for years. Ironically, I would share with you that over my shoulder right here, this is a painting, this is a drawing she did. Oh,
Oh,
and
okay. I can't really see
beautiful.
it, but okay.
It's flowers, beautiful
Ugh,
flowers.
I
And
love
I'm sure that she did that, I'm sure, in the last decade of her life.
By the way,
I'm sorry?
can you hear Benji barking at me?
Yes, I do.
We're going to have to take a pause. I'm so sorry. He has walked. But when I leave him out of the room for the podcast, then he scratches at the door and I am still recording in my home. Yes, Benji, we hear you. The world hears you, Benji. So we're going to take a pause so that I can let Benji go outside where I won't have to hear him. And then we will come back to cousin Dr. Grandma Jane.
I like that.
Are you tired of feeling like you can't get it together? Struggling with clutter that overwhelms you despite your best efforts? Wondering why organization feels impossible while others make it look so easy? You're not alone, and it's not your fault. Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro, host of the Grandma Has ADHD podcast, and I understand exactly what you're going through. I combine my years of hands-on work as founder of Silver Linings Transitions, a move management and home organizing company, together with ADHD coach training, and help adults 50 and over connect the dots between ADHD and lifelong struggles. Whether you're downsizing, decluttering, or simply trying to create systems that work for your ADHD brain, I provide virtual and in-person coaching for those in the San Diego area. Together, we'll develop practical strategies that honor how your brain actually works, not how you think it should work. Ready to trade shame for understanding? Visit grandmahasadhd.com or call to schedule a discovery session at 760-607-7377, because it's never too late to finally make sense of your story. Ever wondered why helping a loved one declutter feels like speaking different languages? I did, especially with my mom. It wasn't until I founded Silver Linings Transitions, helping San Diego seniors organize and move for over a decade, that I discovered why. We all experience clutter differently, and for those of us with ADHD, it's a whole other world. If you are listening in the San Diego area and feeling stuck with moving, paperwork, photos, or home organization, our team at Silver Linings Transitions gets it. We understand ADHD's unique challenges, and we won't just help you get organized. We'll create sustainable systems that finally stick. Schedule a consultation with our team today at 760-522-1624. That's 760-522-1624, or find us at silverliningstransitions.com.
We are back with Jane, and Benji has been taken care of. And don't worry, Jane is like probably one of the biggest animal lovers I know. I did not kill him. I just shoved him outside.
My dog in here too. I understand.
So my grandmother, low self-esteem, very artistic, right? Confided in you.
A
And
lot of very active, very bright, learning always. Can't say enough good things about her.
I feel the same way, and I don't want to make this a tribute to my grandmother, but she was extraordinary. She really was my favorite person. And also, she was so young in her thinking and so hip. She was just always really, I think, ahead of her time that way. And any other things that make you think now that she had ADHD? Just because some of the people that are listening to this podcast are people who are older and realizing, looking back on their lives, oh my gosh, this whole time I've had ADHD. So when they hear themselves and other people's stories, I think that helps them to connect with, oh yeah, that was me.
I think as I look back, I remember your grandmother doing a lot of hand wringing, as did her mother, as does my mother, as does me. So that would be more the
Sure.
case. She was active, and she was always in life. She was very active in life.
Your theory on the smoking, that is actually one of the things that I have learned, is that a lot of that generation, they did smoke, and nicotine was calming. And so it's very possible, because I only knew my grandmother as a smoker, that I didn't get to see those things. And again, I was a child, but I want to go back, because I would hate to have you on this podcast and not address something that's really, really significant and that is successful marriages with people with ADHD. And I know that people with ADHD tend to have a much higher divorce rate. And since not ADHD is your area of specialty, but marriage and family, I would love to kind of talk to you about your thoughts and just kind of share with you sort of what I've come with as as I'm actually a divorce coach as well.
Okay.
So what do you think, Jane?
Well, I think that it's very important that spouses and family members know each other. And when I say know each other, that they understand how they think so that when things go awry, we can read each other. And for example, my husband is very good at knowing that I am just going through the house. I am on a tear. I am doing things. I am busy, and that I thrive on that. So I think a real appreciation for how people think and for the importance of pursuing whatever it is your thought is and trying to learn and trying to be active and just doing whatever it is that we do. But an appreciation that, hey, this is me, nothing wrong with me. I am accomplishing what I need to do, and I have my own agenda at times, but appreciating that as you are together for many years, you sort of have an appreciation for how the other person thinks and what they
Mhm.
need in order to remain organized.
Yeah, I definitely think having a partner who is balanced. It's been great for me. My partner is the opposite of ADHD. He takes forever to make a decision now. And we recognize each other. We kind of call it that yin and that yang. But what else do you think would be critical for a successful marriage for someone with ADHD?
Well, I think taking time to calm oneself is really important. I think most important is taking that time every day to kind of debrief, to talk about the day, to kind of sort things out, to get each other's thoughts, to share
Mhm.
your own thoughts, just to kind of do a little dump of all these things that have happened. Because I think that when our thoughts are all internal and we're not talking about them, they build up inside of us.
Right.
And then we begin to think all of the things that we think. But I think that when you can share that with somebody openly and respond and remark to each other how we see each other, it really helps keep that balance. So I think
Mhm.
that in the way each person thinks and the value that you place on things like learning, reading, pursuing, setting new goals, deciding to
Right.
do new things that keep you active. I think respecting that in each other and understanding how we all think really helps.
I imagine that you're familiar with Brene Brown. So she has ADHD, I believe. And one of the things that I like that she does is she will go to her husband when something's going on and say, the story I'm telling myself is whatever. And I will say that is definitely a trait of ADHD is that we ruminate and we will catastrophize and we will make something in our heads so much bigger than it actually is. And I totally do that with my partner. And now I have the words to say, this is what's going through my head. And then he has the opportunity to say, that's not what's happening for me. So that's huge.
Really huge. That's wonderful.
And I will also say, I think I have another theory for why the divorce rate among people with ADHD is so high. We've not had this conversation before, so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. One is that people with ADHD, we crave the chaos and the excitement. And some people with ADHD will almost look for trouble. And they might be in a good situation and then maybe blow it up or maybe attract a partner that feels chaotic for them because maybe that's repeating a pattern from their family. So they've attracted those partners. And then I would also say that when you have ADHD, sometimes you're not the best partner. And I know that this was one of the problems that I had in my marriage where my ex husband wanted me to sit and be with him and focus. And I couldn't sit and just be with him. And then I would forget things or the house wasn't orderly and that can cause a lot of chaos. So I'd love to hear, I just threw a lot of stuff at it. Would love to hear what you think of what I just said.
Well, I think the part about folks with ADHD sometimes craving chaos, I think that's pretty accurate. And I also think that in order to get along and be able to live with people, you really have to develop a respect for what people need to be organized
Mm.
and what makes people feel good in the environment. And so I think that you really have to stretch yourself and become very sensitive to what the other person is asking of you. And when that is incompatible, it's difficult. And it's okay to be very different, But if you can't talk about it and share it and receive the kind of respect and support that you need, you can begin to feel very lonely in a relationship. And when you feel lonely in a relationship, you begin to seek help in friendship elsewhere and you stop talking to your partner. And from there, it just you don't know each other in a very short time. You just don't know each other.
So I'm going to go anything else. I feel like I'm dragging things out of you. And I want to make sure that people who are tuning in, because I suspect you're going to have both ends. And in terms of my podcast, I've had people have had several marriages and are now single and looking at their lives. And I have some that have had, like you have had a very successful marriage. So just trying to make sure that whatever we're sharing with our audience is something that's going to resonate with them, whether maybe haven't had a successful relationship and they're beating themselves up about it, or they're in a relationship or in a new relationship and they want to keep it strong.
Well, that's a lot of thoughts. And in some ways, I followed every single word and then it went, and I kind of know that about myself. And my partner needs to kind of know that about myself, that it's really easy to become overwhelmed by thoughts and ideas. And so sometimes you don't hold on to your thoughts as clearly as you might. So a real appreciation, I think, again, for how people think, what people need. It's a communal activity living together, being in a relationship. It's communal. Everybody's thoughts and feelings has to be accounted for in some way. And so you have to know yourself. I have to know myself. That's the big deal, is because I can't fake it as well as I think I can.
Mm-hmm.
Try to fake it. I would absolutely try to fake it. In the end, I really know that a lot of times my thoughts, they go different places because I'm easily destructible.
Right. I mean, I know. And that's where I just threw a bunch of them out at you because I'm like, if I don't get it out, then I'm going to forget that I had that thought. Right.
Exactly.
So, okay. So I'm going to turn
I think the big thing is recognizing how for your partner to know and really appreciate and respect how you think, whether you have ADHD or not, to know how the other person thinks and to value that process. So it's not about saying, well, you're inferior in some way or you're superior in some way, but that we're different and we need different things. We need to see things. We need to touch things in order to understand what they are, or we need to hear things in a certain way because each one of us has a different sensory pathway that makes the most sense to us.
I'm going to change direction of the conversation and share a funny story, if I may, Jane. So one of the things that I do in my work before I started the Grandma Has ADHD podcast is I became a senior move manager where I go into people's homes and my company goes in and we help them make the decisions about what they're going to keep when they're downsizing or right sizing to a smaller place, to a senior community, to live, to move, to be near their children, whatever their reason is, or maybe just to go from a 2-story home to a 1-story home. And there are a lot of decisions that get made. And I will say for people with ADHD, it's going to be even harder, but it's hard for anybody who is going through a lifetime of belongings and having to make decisions. And I will also say, Jane, you touched on something, and I don't know if you've heard the term gerotranscendence before. Or do you know this one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, then I'm going to be so excited to share this with you. So Eric Erickson, when he and his wife got into their 80s and he had developed the 8 stages of life,
Right.
he and his wife started to talk to their friends about where they were at that point. And they realized that they were reflecting a lot and they were sort of coming to a peace about the lives that they had lived and their relationships and coming to peace with the idea that they were going to die and really just sort of wrapping things up. And I think so much understanding ADHD and with that lens, when we're going back, is going to be so valuable to people later in life who discover that they have ADHD. I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
So one of the things that I do is I do a presentation called Do You Own Your Stuff or Does Your Stuff Own You? And I'm in San Diego, so I will normally ask the audience, the first thing I say is if I told you that you were going to leave San Diego next week and only take the things that you wanted and you were going to leave everything else behind, I said, I want you to raise your hand really high if your family would want your stuff. So please raise your hand. And then everybody looks around the room because nobody's hand is up and everybody is laughing. So then I give them some tips on what they can do to get the yes. One of those tips, Jane, is you are the brunt of the punchline. Okay. So I believe it was my 50th birthday. Jane sends me this. For those of you who can't see it, it's a purple and white poncho from the 1960s. Jane sends me a card of her wearing it, holding me as like a 1-year-old, and says, "Your grandmother made this for me, and now I want you to have it." So what I say to my audience is, if you give something as a gift, it's not like somebody can say, "I don't want it. Here's the gift back." I thought that was brilliant. And so now people laugh, and then they ask me if I wear the poncho, and I did wear it for a 60s theme party. And then I sent you a picture. Look, I actually wore the poncho, but I love that. I don't know if you intended it to be that way. I mean, because it's hideous. And I love my grandmother, but that is ugly.
It was the most beautiful thing I ever received.
Well, again, in the 60s, when people were wearing it, right? Maybe so. But in 2020, when you sent it to me, not
Right.
so much. But it is an
Mhm.
excellent.
The mothballs did not quite get to it, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very well preserved. Another one of my grandmother's many hobbies and habits. So tell me some of the things that you learned about ADHD that sort of changed the way that you look at yourself now. I know you're not an ADHD expert. That's not your area, but you are a person living with ADHD and you are a grandma. So there's that.
Well, I've done a lot of attempting to downsize myself. Attempting. We're still in the processing of it. And I find it very difficult because every object, every piece of paper has a memory. And so when I sit down to go through these things, I am flooded by memory after memory, and it becomes very difficult. But I think your question is a good one about what would you really take, what you really of value, I think is extremely important. You've touched on in your other podcast, how do you decide what's really of value to you, important to you want to give your kid? And I guess because I sort of consider myself like a historian and I saved almost everything, now I have to go through and kind of get rid of stuff, which kind of is very difficult for me. But I've been informed by my son that when I'm gone, he'll just torch it all. I kind of have to pull a few things that I value and maybe with a little story about why I value them, because otherwise people are going to get purple ponchos forever, right? And they're going to go, "What is this?" And I
Nope.
remember when I gave it and you said, "What is?" And I was so crushed. I thought, "Oh, she's going to see it and remember how great it was when I received it." But I guess
Yeah.
it's different
Would
people.
you? Right. I am also a little, and then one of the things that people don't like about people with ADHD is we don't have a filter. And so typically it comes in my mind and it goes out my mouth and there is no pause. So that's definitely one of the things that in my ADHD coach training, I have been learning about the pause. It's been really significant. But would you like me to give you some coaching and some advice around the downsizing, right sizing process?
I'd love
Okay.
it.
Okay. Well, first, I'm going to tell you what I would tell my clients, and that is that it took you 60, 70 years to accumulate your belongings. So don't expect that you're going to be able to make those decisions in a week. It's not going to happen. So the first thing that I'm going to say is break it down into bite-sized manageable pieces. So just 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day, set your timer and give yourself rewards, build in rewards, whether you're listening to a great podcast like Grandma Has ADHD or a comfort television show that you like, you don't have to really pay attention to it, but it's just on for comfort, or just great music that you like. 10 minutes a day, and the momentum will help. And you want to start with the low hanging fruit. You don't want to start with the sentimental stuff because you're going to go down memory lane, but just start with the easy. Declutter first, the stuff that really isn't going to matter. And I think also what I recommend to people is that they do a family show and tell. So what you could do is you could go on Zoom. I know you are really lucky that you have both of your kids in your area, but you could even go on Zoom and record the stories. And so now you could say, "This was a poncho that my grandmother Miriam gave me for my whatever birthday." And so then at least you've got a memory and you've collected it. Because I think for so many people, they want their lives to be remembered. And then the other thing is, don't forget that you can photograph things and you don't have to keep it all. And you can save one or two from a collection and then you can give the rest away. And another challenge for people with ADHD is that we have a strong sense of justice, of social justice. So we aren't going to easily throw something in the garbage. I mean, that's going to bother us. We want to know that it's going to end up in the right hands and that something good is going to come from it. So when who you're giving it to, or when you think of, oh, I'm going to give it to this charity or to this person who needs it, it makes it a lot easier. So those would be some of the big tips that I would give to you. I'm going to give you another big one if I can. So you and I were talking about my grandmother, and I had asked you about the lamp, this famous lamp, and you didn't remember it, but that's okay too because you have ADHD. But this was a lamp that my grandmother had bought when I was 4 years old. And by the way, I was my grandmother's only grandchild. And she always told me that my name was on the bottom of this lamp. Well, she passed away unexpectedly. She had not told my mother and my uncle, and they gave the lamp to another cousin. I did fight for that lamp. As you can imagine, I'm a little feisty. I did eventually get that lamp back. But when somebody passes away, if you haven't really adequately prepared your family, it can lead to a lot of, I can't come up with the word, Jane. What's the word? Conflict. See, there's me dropping words. When my aunt on my father's side passed away unexpectedly, I had 4 cousins, and they fought so much over my aunt's things that they ended up dividing up 2 and 2, calling in the police, never speaking again. And I am certain that is not the legacy. So I'm leading with this book, which I love. It's called I'm Dead, Now What? Can't see it because, by the way, I've got the green screen on, or because I'm recording in my ADHD 17-year-old child's room and I'm hiding her piles of shit everywhere.
I wondered where the piles were.
Oh,
You
like
told me we're in a room and I was looking at, oh my goodness. That doesn't
yes.
look
So
like
I have a virtual screen for those of you who aren't watching it on YouTube, and it's got a grand piano and looks like such a calm space. And it is, I'm going to turn off, I'm going to be me, like I tell people to be, and I'm going to turn off the virtual background so that you can actually see what's really going on in my life. And I'm going to go with none. And so I am sitting in front of her sofa, and you'll start to see piles. Now, she cleaned her room yesterday. We just haven't finished cleaning her room. So anyway, that's what's really going on for me. Piles everywhere.
Great.
But anyway, now I can show you. The book is called I'm Dead, Now What? And it's to really, really tell your family what's important. It's going to be the things what's important to your ethics and your values and how you want to be cared for, what you want to happen to your pets. I mean, we want to avoid these tough conversations, but so much better to just have them and then let them go and then just enjoy each other and not have to worry about all of that stuff.
Well, one of the things that I heard from your other podcast was that, you have many, was that you also kind of need to look at the will so that kids are not totally shocked and surprised, which I will tell you, even as recent as this morning, I was discussing that idea with someone who was actually facing cancer and mortality. And her idea was to have a real surprise come out in the will. And basically she has 2 kids. And I said, that's going to really leave them in a rough spot with each other because that's pretty unequal.
So
And
yes, my best friend from high school, her father has already said, you and your sister are not getting the same thing. And he told her why. And it wasn't because he loved her sister more. It was because he was concerned more about his sister financial stability and security than he was for my friends. And so to your point, like that leaves them to have that good relationship. I'll give you another great one. And I'm going to give credit to the person that it's due. And it was Margaret Novak wrote a book called Squint. And it's about reimagining your life in the 70s and beyond. And she shared this great story that I now share with my audience when I do presentations. So I'll give you the story. You tell me what you think, Jane. So there were 2 sisters and they went through their mother's things. And for the most part, they agreed on everything. And then they got to 2 items. They both wanted them. One was a vase and one was a ring. So I always ask the audience, what do you think they did? So I'd love to hear what you think they did.
Well, I have no idea what they did. I mean, the obvious would be one takes one, the other, or they swap them back and forth every now and again.
Ding, ding, ding. That's actually what they did. They decided to swap every year. I think it was on New Year's Day. And there are fresh flowers in the vase. Now, wouldn't it be great to leave a legacy like that for our children? Like, this is how I want you to handle it. So I think when we don't have those conversations, that's when we are setting our family up for trouble, because weddings and funerals bring out the worst in people.
Well, they really do. And it's very sad because that's exactly the time when your heirs need to lean on each other and have support and have love and not
Mhm.
feel ripped off. Because if they do feel ripped off, you begin to kind of feel funny, like, gosh, I don't even know what to think about this. And it
Well,
does begin to mess with your self concept a little bit about how much was I loved?
no,
Terrible stuff.
and you'll know this as a therapist. I don't have siblings this way, but that we resort to our family dynamics like, oh, you are always the favorite and this is the troublemaker. And we sort of assume those roles, right, as adults when we're dealing with our aging parents. She's nodding her head.
Well, I just agree about all of that. I think it's really changed. I think in the past, people did not talk about unpleasant topics. They referred to cancer as the C word.
Mhm.
Death was just like, well, we're not going to talk about that. Even if the person is dying, we're not going to tell them that they're dying.
Mhm.
And so the story is being rewritten. And so we really have to decide, what are our values? How do we want to do it? Well, how do we want to leave things?
Mhm.
And that's a really important decision-making process.
Mhm.
People, if you have fights at the funeral, it's not going to be great. It's not going to be great for the family left behind.
I just think of my Aunt Mickey and I just think of like how devastated she would have been to have seen her family and what ended up happening to it as a result of not having those conversations, having those decisions. So I didn't mean to take it down that path, but like I said,
Well,
when you have
right.
ADHD, you wind and wind.
It's double grief, though, because you lose the person who died, and then you also lose these relationships that otherwise are extremely important.
That reminds me of a conversation we were having
Sure.
yesterday, Jane, when we were talking about what happened when my grandmother passed away with my mom. And that was that my grandmother died unexpectedly, only 9 months after my grandfather had passed away. And my mother was not prepared to let go of my grandmother and her things. And she ended up bringing everything into her home that we didn't take, minus like the real obvious garbage. And then my mother had basically grief hoarding, where I'm not going to say she had hoarding disorder, but she had situational hoarding. We see that happening, like a triggering event.
I have seen that in my own caseload of people who are stuck with 5 sets of china, and it takes up the entire kitchen. And it's kind of like, what are you going to do with it? And it's just hard to let go of. And it feels somewhat like I'm being disloyal if I get rid of my loved ones' things. And so there's all kinds of trips that we put ourselves on, that whole thinking process of, what would they want me to do? They would want me to keep it, of course.
So
And
they wouldn't. Do you know what Swedish death cleaning is, Jane?
tell me.
Oh, okay. So Swedish death cleaning is proactively going through your home as if you had passed. And if you've ever gone through a loved one's things and you've had to make those decisions, you are going through your own things and you're making those decisions for your family. And I actually asked my mom is in Florida, I'm her only child, and my mom likes her shit. She likes it. And that's been a bone of contention between the two of us since I can remember. And I just said, Mom, I need you to let me know what's of value, what's significant, what the stories are, because you don't want me to come in and take everything off to Goodwill. I think you have two things that happen. You have either, well, you have more than that, but you either have the kids and they get the dump truck and like, it's gone, I don't want to deal with it. Or you have the situations like my mom. So that Swedish death cleaning is an opportunity to go and make those decisions for your loved ones so that they're not grieving and having to let go of things. And it's such a gift. And so you can actually find Swedish death cleaning. There are books, there are TV shows, but you will not find this one, Jane. I'm going to share it with you. Okay.
Mhm.
So do you think that if you put a box together of things that meant a lot to you, maybe letters or whatever, that you really didn't want anyone to open, but you aren't ready to discard them, that if you put do not disturb on the box, do you think you might have a family member who would open that box?
Yes.
Okay, please. I know I would. So you've at least got this. So you wrap a bottle of tequila in the box with a note that says, I did ask you not to open it, but I hope you'll have some fun.
Love it. Love that idea. Love that idea. Yeah.
Yes.
No,
So
I think that's great.
I would say the benefit that I have of being in the situation that I'm in, where I have seen people have to make the decisions about what they're going to keep and not keep. And it's agonizing. I don't even bring it in anymore, Jane. Like I go on a vacation and I don't even bring a souvenir because I don't want to have to say goodbye to it one day. and then just take a picture.
No, I think that's very correct. And I think that one of the things that unfortunately having a mass of new material stuff all of a sudden in your life is that whatever organization you've been able to establish for yourself kind of goes out the window because you had a little organization, but now you have another truckload of stuff on top of it and it's strangling.
Hmm. I'll
It
give
would
you
become-
a little more advice in the process. So it's easier to focus on what you want to keep than to worry about what you're going to do with what you don't keep. So one of the things that we do, like for instance, we'll clear off a dining room table and we'll say, okay, well, again, we're talking about people who are going to a smaller space and they can't take it out. Let's put the things that, you love on the dining room table. And then that you can be a lot more deliberate about it. So
Great idea.
focusing on that is another easy way to go. But I always say you want to start with the low hanging fruit, clothing, books, things that you're not going to have as much attachment to, unless books are your thing. And then that's a whole conversation. But, go. And then if you've got shoes that are collecting dust, maybe you're not really wearing them. And being realistic, what am I really doing? How am I really living? Am I really ever going to do this again? And I think part of it is also just grieving who we may never be again or what we'd hoped for ourselves. I mean, I hold up a pair of size 2 jeans jokingly and say, 7 years ago, these jeans fit me. Do you think they feel good? It makes me feel good when I see these jeans hanging in my closet because I'll never fit into that again.
Good point. Good point.
You
No,
need to
I
come here with your presentations, Jane. Just hop on a plane and come to San Diego.
Absolutely. I would love to. Well, I think that organization is really top priority in terms of having ADHD. I do know where my purse is at all times because there's one chair where it lives in the
Nice.
house. Otherwise,
Mhm.
I'd spend 30 minutes trying to get out of the house, which I know what that
Mhm.
feels like. And that's
Mhm.
not a pleasant experience. So I think that a lot of it is understanding how we think and what we need individually to be able to cope with the stuff and to
Mhm.
know where our things are, what we can do to facilitate ourselves, whether that's breaking things down or looking for the low hanging fruit or whatever it is that we use to do some sort of organizational process within ourselves. But I think that's really important.
Any other parting words that you want to leave our listeners with before we say goodbye on this podcast? Because it's not goodbye for us. It's just goodbye for this podcast.
Right. I think that one of the things that stands out to me is this whole idea about inheriting these traits and inheriting ADHD and or ADD. And very often, like myself, the first time I really understood ADHD was in the context of my son being diagnosed ADHD, but then being faced with the issue of, okay, which one of us has it?
Mm.
And
Is it
coming
both?
to a place where not only do we have to accept our child, but also accept ourselves and kind of look back at generations like you and I have been doing at mothers and grandmothers, and we can see certain attributes. And I must say that there are so many good attributes about having ADHD. For me, it's a very energetic experience. I feel very like I'm kind of like told I'm the ever ready bunny, and I'm just always moving around and doing stuff. And that's good. That feels good to me. So I know that there are certain aspects of ADHD that I would never give up. And
Eh, So that begs the question that I like to ask. I like to end the podcast with, if you could press a magic button that would make your ADHD go away, which is all of the good and all of the bad, would you push the button?
I would have a really hard time because you have to break it down into ideas like reading. No, no, no. What I would like to have better comprehension. I would like to be able to read
Sure.
faster.
But that
There's,
was the question.
I understand. I probably, at this point in my life, I would say no, ADHD has been really great for me, but it wasn't great growing up. And it
Yes.
wasn't great coping with the challenges that it presented to me. It wasn't great.
That seems to be consistent. A lot of people would have opted to press that button younger, but I agree. I love the energy level that I have as a 55-year-old woman. And I think the curiosity, the natural curiosity is going to help us age a lot better because we're constantly learning and wanting to improve. And any other parting thoughts? One of the things that I always say is like, I get off the phone and I'm like, I should have said that. Is there any of those? Oh, I should have said that.
Well, I just wanted to share a little story in that this year I learned how to play Mahjong. Now, it turns out that you have cards, which you try to make a certain homage in your hand, you want to have a certain pattern. So the basis of Mahjong is that there are patterns of numbers. As I look through them, when I try to break it down and have it make sense in my brain, I actually write down every possible pattern I might be looking for. And some of them I know I'll never find that one. Just like a do, I'll never find these because you become aware even very quickly as you look at something as to whether it's overwhelming and you can do it, whether it makes sense to you so that you could do it. So I think we all have these ways of learning and ways of not getting overwhelmed. And I think we really have to respect that about ourselves and to really look into it even further to understand what we can do to function best.
Yeah, I think you're 100. I mean, again, we have to learn how we work. We have to learn how our partners work and what they need. And anyway, I know that you are backed up with clients that you can't even handle your caseload. Otherwise, I would tell people to find you as a therapist, but I will put a plug in for your book, Keeping Love Alive, which can be found on Amazon. And we're going to put a link to it in the show notes so that you can find it. I appreciate all of you who indulged me. Like I said, this was super fun to have my cousin Jane, who is one of my absolute favorite cousins. And just everybody should have a cousin Jane. She was definitely the voice of reason. I called her when I was going through divorce issues. I've called her with family issues. Like I said, I don't remember a life when there wasn't cousin Jane in it. So, and then when I discovered that she also had ADHD, it was amazing. Anyway, I hope that for those of you who listened to the podcast, you liked it, or I hope you loved it. I hope you will share it with your friends and family and join our growing Grandma Has ADHD community, because we really thrive in community when we realize that we are not alone and we are not disordered. We're wired differently. So anything else you want to say, Jane?
I love it. I really love that you're talking about this and that we're all trying to figure it out together.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. And please give Gary and all of the kids in the zoo big hugs for me. And thank you so much for finally saying yes. I appreciate it. So again, we're just trying to give you the information so that you can make the rest of your life the best of your life. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.
The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The hosts, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.